Right. Justine, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you on. And I just kind of introduce you because you're involved in many different things and you work as, like a light worker. You're involved in like NLP and mindsets and healing and being a practitioner. Like, kind of how did you kind of get into this and like, kind of things that, involves that you do? Because I know you run workshops as well.
Sure. So I got into what I do from having gone through really traumatic times. So I was in abusive relationships. I was, friends with like the wrong people. And also I had some very difficult times growing up. So I kind of over the years started focusing on, right, I want to feel good. I want to feel better. I had suffered from depression for 15 years, anxiety, and it was getting to the point where I didn't want to live my life like that anymore. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to wake up every day and feel positive and just feel
Mm.
good. So I started sort of focusing on holistic tools and techniques to help me heal, because I'd been to see clinical counselors and had clinical intervention, and it didn't really work for me. So I had to find a solution that was more suited for myself. So I did start doing some soul searching and, really focusing on what was driving me, what was inspiring me, what was making me feel good. And I turned to holistic therapy, so like mindfulness, meditation. I started doing a lot of spiritual work. I'd always been interested in spiritual work ever since I was really young. I'd always sort of like swayed towards the whole, connecting with spirit, trying to understand the other side and all that sort of thing. So all of those things together, I sort of turned it into a business. So now what I do is I run wellness workshops for companies. So all of the experience that I've gone through, all of the lessons that I've learned with positive thinking and how it can completely change your life, I've used all of those things to help other people in terms of helping them with their mental health. So positive thinking, mindfulness, confidence building, wellness, looking after your well-being and things like that. And then I also have the other side where I do one-to-one therapy. So I do one-to-one coaching, and I also do one-to-one sort of tarot work, Reiki healing, and I've launched a load of products that I sell as well. So all of the things that go together are sort of like my spiritual side with my holistic side, with my life experiences that I've then engineered into a service and a product of my business. And I did NLP coaching as well, which is neuro linguistic programming, because it's something that I really wanted to understand from more like a cognitive behavioral therapy side of things. Right, how can I help people on a more sort of human level, because I am extremely spiritual and I've got, easy ways to help people on that level, but not everybody is sort of into that. So it's sort of like working with that side as well.
No, I think you're doing really great work, and I think like it's good that you're kind of multifaceted, where you can kind of work in different areas and different departments to kind
Yeah.
of suit people and help them. And I think like by I think like energy and spirituality and your mindset is a lot of where it's kind of where it kind of starts, isn't it? And by
Mm.
tapping into yourself and getting to know yourself and be able to have someone help you in that journey, to heal. And I think, like you said, you
Mm.
mentioned, you had depression for a long time. And I think, by doing what you're doing and, working through things, like it's really, a powerful process, isn't it? And being able to provide value back to other people, it must be really rewarding as well.
It's really rewarding. And I have to say, waking up every day knowing that I can potentially change someone's life with what I do is just, you can't beat that feeling. I mean, to be able to help people from my own learned experiences. And yes, I have been through a very intense spiritual journey. So I've learned a lot that maybe the average person would not, or someone that maybe wasn't into the spiritual side may not experience. And for me to be able to take that spiritual knowledge and turn it into wisdom, help other
Mm.
people, I think that is something that I'm very proud of. And my whole purpose here is healing humanity and helping individuals to overcome really hard life challenges and help to change perspectives and help people understand, right, so this is challenging me now, what is it actually teaching me, as opposed to I'm getting bad luck again, or why am I going through this horrible experience. It's about really seeing the other side of it. And working together with other people that have mentored me along my journey, people that have already been there with other experiences and learning from them, and then being able to sort of take it all in and sort of stick it back out into like workshops or coaching or things like that is really, really helpful. I mean, I've had a lot of inspiration from, you know, people that I've met along my journey, people that have been through really bad times. I've sort of like helped them but learnt from them at the same time. And I think that it's really important that when we go through life, it's really, really important to heal as we go along, because if we don't and we just ignore anything because we're afraid of opening up that can of worms with our emotions, what ultimately happens is there's a bit like a filter system. So if you've got the subconscious mind, it stores absolutely everything that you do, that you think, that you feel, that you say. And if you don't sort of heal from experiences or trauma that you go through, then what you're ultimately doing is adding more and more gunk to this filter. And then it gets to the point where you have a burnout or you break down or you can't cope. And future experiences or challenges might come up that will constantly test you and will bring up previous experiences that you haven't healed from. So it's really, really important to focus on your well-being and focus on getting those experiences that have taught you things and moving on from them so that you can move forward.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's so important to, you know, be open to that, isn't it? You know, and to be wanting to, to develop yourself and to change. And I think, do you think like during the pandemic, you've seen like an increase in that? You've seen like people, suffering, or having their, like an increase in that happening? Do you think during this period?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic, I mean, from my perspective personally, in terms of why the pandemic might have happened maybe on a more sort of higher level in terms of the spiritual side of things, it was definitely to help people, you know, go into isolation to in order to help themselves to recognize what's not working, what is working, what's going well, what can I change, what can I shift. I spent in 2019, I spent 9.5 months completely in isolation. I put myself in a sort of, I suppose, place where I didn't meet up with anybody. I literally just, it was like I was in my own personal lockdown. And I did it in order to help me grow and heal and work through every single bit of trauma that I'd ever been through in order to move me forwards on my path. Now, initially, when I, you know, going back a few years ago, when I did have struggles, I did seek professional help. I had a very wonderful woman who helped me. And ultimately, she helped me to the point where I could then help myself. And then by becoming more self-aware and working on my self-awareness, I then was able to then coach myself and then get myself to a point where I could then turn that into helping other people. But yeah,
Hmm.
so absolutely, the pandemic has dramatically increased mental health. I mean, having worked for the NHS and having sort of I still very much speak to NHS individuals, the mental health has gone on a huge rise. And there is sort of like a backlog of 6 months for people to be seen just for anxiety. And I think that, you know, when we work with holistic therapies, we don't then therefore need to rely on the help of, you know, getting to see a doctor or having to see clinical interventions, because don't get me wrong, you know, clinical intervention does work for some people, but if it's more sort of lifestyle things and going through things like the pandemic, which can cause a lot of adversities with our emotions and our thoughts, then it's really important to start maybe looking at other ways to help ourselves.
Hmm. No, I think that's a really great point. And like I saw like an article the other day, and like you said, 6 months just to be seen for anxiety. I
Mm,
saw one in the UK. I think this is UK based, which is like people are on a waiting list for 4 years. Young
mm,
people.
yeah,
Um, to be seen, and it just shows like people all in different situations. But I think like it's really nice that you're able to help people, with their mindset, with their energy, in spirituality, because
mm,
we're all energy. And I mean, I remember when we spoke previously, there's a lot of things that we kind of can't that we can't explain, if that makes sense. When you think
yeah,
of spirituality, things can happen to us, or we notice certain things.
mm,
Um, but I think like like to grow and to change, you have to kind of hold yourself accountable, don't you? You have to be wanting
yeah,
to change, and be open to that. um
And that's
But
one
it
thing
is,
I teach. Yeah, I say to people, at the end of the day, look externally for help if you need someone professional to step in. Absolutely. But ultimately, the healing starts with us doing it on our own, and healing ourselves, like external validation, all of this sort of stuff. It's not going to help. It helps the ego, but it doesn't help the soul. We have to go within in order to heal ourselves fully and transform into the version of us that we want to be. And transforming into different versions happens every day, in terms
mm,
of based upon our experiences, our traumas, anything that we hear, that we see, it all transforms us as a person. So it's
mm,
really important to really work on the personal development, really work on healing yourself and working on your strengths, working on your weaknesses, and
mm,
really excelling yourself in terms of taking time out to focus on you and focus on what's important to you. Unfortunately, due to environmental conditioning and things like, the way we've been parented or the way we've been schooled, it's taught us a certain way of being. And actually, we're all individual people on our own paths, and we've got to follow what's right for us in every single given moment. So when I teach people through, doing workshops and things like that, I say to them, present moment is key. If you want to be happy, if you want to live your life to the best of your ability, you have got to be in the present moment. Because if you're in the present moment, you will never, ever feel anxiety. Anxiety is to do with two things. It's to do with living in the future, having your head in the future, but it's actually also connected to previous traumas and experiences that created anxiety. So therefore, when you come across a similar situation again, your brain goes into panic mode and says, right, we're going into fight or flight mode because we're in another situation again that's similar to the last time that you went through trauma. It's your brain's way of protecting you. But it's
mm,
the only way that I got out of depression and I got out of anxiety was by practicing mindfulness, meditation, being in the present moment, and really going within. And yes, you do have to open up that can of worms. But all I'd say is healing. Yes, it's ugly initially, but once you get into it, you get addicted to healing yourself, and you love that feeling of waking
mm,
up going, I feel good. And it's
mm.
all about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. And, like you mentioned, by, going within, and you have to be, willing to, go through those motions and, you know, go through that trauma and, to deal with that. And, like there's a lot of strength there to kind of be gained, in the long term. I think when you're going through it at the time, you don't really always kind of see it, but like,
Mhm.
just by, taking those initial steps and, working on it each day and, moving forward, isn't it, is where it kind of all kind of happens. And like when say you work with people, like say in the spiritual side or, like the mindset side, like where would you kind of like say start with somebody, if they're kind of going through something? I know everyone's
Mm.
very, very different and going through different things, but
Of
like,
course. The way that I would sort of suggest to someone, and this is completely free for everybody to do, which means they don't have to pay a penny out of their pockets. So, what I say to people is, right, there are some holistic techniques that you can use to initially get yourself and your emotions and your nervous system to be into a calm state. Once you're in that position, you can then start capturing what emotions do you feel, what thoughts are running through your mind, how can you help yourself by journaling and writing down exactly what it is that you want to get out of your head. So let's say, for example, someone's in a state of anxiety. The first step has to be, right, you have to bring yourself into the present moment. So there are two ways. You can either have an object that you could call your safe object, which you use, and this is a form of CBT therapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, where you pick up an object and that is your safe object. And what you do is you pick it up, you look at it, you inspect it, you really are putting mindfulness practice into this object. Because what you're doing is you're taking the panic away from the mind and you're distracting yourself by focusing on this one object. So that's the first tip that I would suggest in terms of getting yourself to be in the present moment. The second, but probably more so important tip is to do deep breathing. So if you feel yourself panicking, the best thing to do is get up and stand away and walk away from whatever situation you're in, whether you're in public, whether you're in front of a laptop. Get up, walk away, and just take some deep breaths. breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 4 seconds will straight away calm down the nervous system. It's only when you can calm down the physical symptoms of anxiety that you'll be able to work on the other side of it. And the way that you work on the other side of the anxiety, in terms of what's going on in the mind, is literally writing down how you feel, writing down what thoughts could possibly have come into my head that could have triggered the anxiety. And then you can go from there in terms of moving forwards, because it's all to do with the mindset, and it really is mind over matter. And it's a case of being able to be in control of your emotions in order to stop the challenging times from coming forwards. Now, ultimately, the emotions connect to the ego. We cannot stop the ego. We can't fully get rid of it because it's who we are. That's human nature. But what you can do is learn to control the ego. You can control your emotions, and you can absolutely control any other negative aspect that you're trying to work on. So it's just really important to never, ever give up on that self-development, because it is a consistent practice. It's like you practice mindfulness consistently, then it will really, really work. But if you stop, you're just ultimately going back to a place where you don't want to go back to. So it takes 21 to 42 days to change a habit. So it's really, really important to focus on integrating in those 3 to 6 weeks the habits that you want to, change and bring in.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, like the points you made, like really important, and they're like the foundations and the kind of core ways of, moving forward, and, by making those first steps to, implement change and to grow. And, I
Yeah.
say, mindfulness, journaling, gratitude lists, and really
Yeah.
looking at, the internal, doing that internal work, and making those necessary steps, because you get to know yourself, and you get to
Mm.
grips, I suppose, of what you want in your life and where you're at. And
Mm.
I think a lot of the time, people sometimes don't think about those things,
No.
or they don't know much about those things, or there's the whole spectrum. I mean, a lot of people do, some people don't. And I think everyone's different, and everyone has different traumas and experiences. So
Yeah.
there's going to be lots of different things for each, based on each person. But
Yeah.
it's definitely, a powerful way, as you mentioned, by really kind of taking hold of, your demons, if that makes sense, or what's
Yeah.
going on.
So basically, we all have a shadow self. So a shadow self is basically the things that we don't like about ourselves. So like, say, for example, it might be worrying, it might be being hot-tempered, it might be saying things in a certain way. We don't really like the way we say things. So our shadow self is something that will always be with us. We're born with a shadow self, which you could call the ego. And we're born with this, and it goes through us throughout our whole lives. And it's not something we can fully rid ourselves of, but it is something that we can learn to heal and control, because ultimately negative adverse emotions like anger or fear or anything like that, they tend to come up because they come up from childhood issues. We're not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, worrying about the outcome of things because it happened that way before, so therefore it means in my head that it's going to happen that way again. So it's really, really important, like I mentioned, to focus on the present moment. And you mentioned gratitude earlier. The one quickest, surest way to bring you into a state of happiness and joy is to be grateful and focus on what you've got and how lucky people are, or and how blessed they are to have what they have, and actually know that change is inevitable. Change is absolutely guaranteed in our lives. So if you are going through really difficult times, just remember that change will always be on the horizon, and that good things can come our way. But it's about resetting our mindset to think in a way where we expect good things to always happen to us. And if we focus on, as we mentioned, that we are all energy, and if we focus on negative energy, that is exactly what we'll attract into our life. It's to do with a theory called the law of attraction. What you put out there to the universe, or whoever you want to call it, that is what you ultimately bring back into your life. So from a spiritual perspective, in order to break cycles that keep repeating, we have to be aware of, right, what is this trying to teach me? What is this bad time trying to teach me? What is this challenge trying to teach me? Because we are here to learn lessons. That is why our souls are on this earth, to learn lessons. So in order to learn those lessons, we will be tested. And in order to pass the test, we have to we have to be aware of what's going on in order to know that we're being tested. So it
Mm.
really is all about that, to be honest.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, isn't there? And it's really deep. And I think like the people really should tap into gratitude and journaling and these kind of things. And I've heard people. There's a stand-up comedian that I like, and he talks about journaling. And he's I think he's in his 50s or something like that. And he said it helped him
Mm,
massively. And he said he looks back on his life, and he can see where he was in dark places and how he's grown and where he's shifted and
yeah.
all of these things. And I think he's turning it into a book, or he's wanting to turn it all into a book. So I mean,
Mm,
there's so many positives to come from journaling, and it's quite refreshing if you just when you do it.
yeah.
And I think definitely I saw an article about it actually, and it was talked about males, males and their mental health, and
Yeah.
saying that because sometimes men, and not all men, but some people don't, like specifically males, don't always talk about things that are going on. So they were
Yeah.
saying, an outlet, and this article was that
Mm.
men can journal, and I think it's worked well for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, society has labeled mental health as being a bad thing. And that's why there is such a stigma attached to it. At the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with having anxiety. There's nothing wrong with being depressed. There is nothing wrong with having adverse thoughts or negative emotions. It's just about, right, well, what's not working for me is it's making me unhappy. So that's what's important, is my happiness, not what anybody else outside my world thinks. And it's really important to just say, you know what, I want to bring balance into my life because it makes me happy, not because
Mm,
I'm trying to be XYZ for that person over there, or my workplace, or my partner. It's all about us as individuals. It's about really focusing on what works for us may not work for someone else. So it's really important to focus on your own path.
mm. No, definitely, definitely. It's such a a good point, and something that I think people should look at more. I think it's getting more out there into the media, isn't it? I think more so is kind of
Yeah. And the
with the
thing is,
pandemic.
it's a shame that a pandemic has had to happen in order to get people to sort of let go of that stigma. But
Yeah.
all I would say is, I was saying to people, this is something that Tony Robbins, who's someone that Anthony Robbins, he's someone that I follow. I think he's inspirational. I think he's so
Mm,
motivational. But one thing he pretty much states is, you've got to own it. You've got to
mm,
stand up and be proud of who you are. Be proud of, the dark thoughts and the demons and, the dark side and the things you hate about yourself. Be proud of your weaknesses, because you make what makes you who you are. And in order to move forwards with those things, it's about saying, right, well, that doesn't make me happy, that doesn't make me happy, and working on those things, but not feeling guilty or feeling ashamed of those negative things that are happening in your life, and actually going, do you know what, they've made me who I am today, and now what I can do is focus on changing those things to make me happy. And
mm.
that's what's important.
Yeah. No, definitely. You have to definitely, own your stuff, don't you? And I think that's, one of the key points you mentioned. And he's a really great guy. And I think, owning your weaknesses and your strengths, and, like you have to take responsibility for that, don't you? Because,
Mhm.
it's your stuff, and you can turn that around and you can work on those things. And I was just thinking as well, like, do you have any like favorite books that you've read recently or anything like that?
I was about to mention, actually, The Secret by Rhonda Bryan, and also
Mm,
Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And they could not be more true. So Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life is all about the language you use with yourself. It's all about positive thinking. It's all about, what does your inner critic, inner voice, what does it say to you? Are you listening to that? Are you taking that on board? And if you are taking on the inner criticism, are you taking it on in a positive way that can help you to move forwards? Or are you letting it destroy and self-sabotage? And The Secret is all about the fact that what you put out to the universe is what you attract back. So ultimately, your thoughts, your feelings creates your reality. And
mm,
I used to be, about 10 years ago, I used to say to people, yeah, no, but this person's making me unhappy, and that's why I'm unhappy, and that situation's making me unhappy. When actually, I could remove myself from that situation. I can remove myself from that person, but I was blaming other people externally for my unhappiness. But actually, these situations that had come into my life was a manifestation of my thoughts and the way I looked at myself. It's a bit like if you look at yourself in the mirror, that's whatever you put out to the universe, that's what you will mirror back. So if you find a lot of people out there are angry or rude to you, you've got to take a look at yourself. You've got to own it. You've got to go, right, what is it that I'm putting out there that could be bringing these situations back? I tell you now, blunt as this may sound, we choose our reality with our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions. And our happiness is our choice. The only thing that stops us from being happy is us. And it's so important. There is, it's a journey, at the end of the day, healing and changing your thinking. It is a journey, but trust me, when you get to the other side, you will be so glad and grateful that you did it. I mean, if I could get out of 15 years of depression and anxiety using holistic therapy, then anyone can, in my opinion. I really
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think, like, I commend you for, like, all that you're doing, and, for you, moving through that, it's really, like, motivational and inspirational. And I think it just shows, the power that we have, within us, and, the choices that we have, to, if we want to change, then we can, and if someone has done it, then someone else can as well, and we can ourselves.
yeah.
And it's so important that we, take hold, and believe in ourselves. And like you said, we create our own happiness, we create our own reality, your mindset, your energy, and, law of attraction, and what you give out comes back to you. I think it's so true. And, you have a choice if you want to be around certain people, or you want to allow certain things into your life. Um,
One thing
it's
I was going to say
mm,
was that, going off on talking about that exactly, was that the few things that really helped me on my journey with this, because it's not an easy thing to go from being a negative thinker to a positive thinker. It's not easy to go from being full of emotional baggage and feeling angry at the world to feeling really blissfully happy and appreciating life. The things that I would mention would be the following: that you have to believe in yourself. You really have to get your self-belief up to a level that you really appreciate who you are. And it's about being really kind to yourself and appreciating that actually things take time. And rather than focusing on the time aspect specifically of the healing journey, more so focus on the energy side of the journey, of saying, right, well, it doesn't matter if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, it doesn't matter. What matters is getting my energy to a really good place where I feel good again. And it's also about really working on the self-love, really self-love being things like saying no to situations or people that you're not happy about, doing things like really looking after your well-being, looking after your mind, your body, and your soul, in order to align all the three together so that you can move forwards. It's so important to focus on self-love, self-belief, and really being kind and compassionate to yourself, and also focusing on the inner child. What I mean by that is we all have the inner child. Now, the inner child is basically you as a child. And when you grow up and become an adult, that inner child stays with you, no matter what. So if any trauma that you've picked up as a child will ultimately dictate the way that you come across as an adult. So let's give an example here. I never felt good enough as a child. I never felt worthy. I never felt the love that I really wanted to feel. And so what ended up happening was I got involved in abusive relationships. I got involved with the wrong friends. I got involved in jobs that really weren't good enough for me. And it's all because I thought that I didn't deserve the best. I didn't deserve to be loved. I didn't deserve to find the right person. Working on my inner child, and I've done things like hypnotherapy, I've done things like EFT, which is emotional freedom tapping, going back right back to my childhood and going, right, what part of my childhood did I not feel happy, and why did I not feel happy? And then it's about reparenting the inner child. And it's a process where it's a bit of a long-winded process to explain, but in a very quick sort of short thing, it's where you go back to your childhood, you see that version of yourself, you visualize that version of yourself, say 8 years old, let's say. And then what you do is you then parent that child. So you put your arm around that 8-year-old person, you tell that person that everything's going to be okay, and that they are safe, and that you're here to look after them going forwards. And even though it's the same, you're the same person, it's like your adult you and your child you're still reparenting your inner child. And when you reparent the inner child in a positive way, you heal that inner child, and therefore it helps.
Yeah, it's so powerful, isn't it? When you think about the ability that we have as a person, and looking at your inner child, and you mentioned like your beliefs and the reason why we think a certain way, and how it can come from childhood trauma and certain events happening,
Mm,
and in those first kind of formidable years growing up, how that can mold your belief system in some way. And I mean, you can change your belief system, but sometimes how it can kind of set you up to be for how you're living your life, or the way that you think, and for what you're attracting. And like being able to look at your inner child, and to support your inner child, and be there for your
mm,
inner child, and to move forward. Because like you said, a lot of the time people are kind of on autopilot somehow, because they're just running on the programming that they've had growing up.
yeah,
And everyone's got
programming.
their own, yeah, everyone's got their own how can I put it, life experience being a kid, and different ways of thinking and believing. But that's
Yeah.
ultimately where you kind of need to look at and start, isn't it? And
Mm,
if you've experienced certain things happening, you're then going to probably attract that into your life, and think,
yeah.
oh, this is how it's meant to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's really key points you mentioned, to address things, because it your mindset's powerful. And you people sometimes, like you said, they attract things into their life, and they might blame it on something else, but actually,
Yeah.
like, it's the way that you're thinking and
Yeah.
gravitating.
And self-limiting beliefs, they are saying things like, obvious ones are saying things like, I can't do this because I haven't got the skills. I can't get that job because I haven't got the qualifications. And like less obvious ones might be, oh, well, I'm going to get a job that way because that's how I got it before. When actually, self-limiting beliefs is the surest way to block yourself from moving forwards. It is the one thing that stops your mind from being free. And as much as we are here to learn life lessons and soul lessons, whatever they may be, it's so important to make sure that we really enjoy our lives here, because we're only here once, right? And then off we go back to wherever. And it's really important to really live and find the joy in every single day. And the only way you can do that is by being in the present moment and really showing yourself that love and compassion. For example, talking about the inner child again, I had a moment about 2 weeks ago where I got like really stressed about something, and I realized that was my inner child having a tantrum. And I was like, no, we're not going to do this. We're not doing this today, because you are good enough, Justine, and you are good
Yeah.
enough to get this task done. So there was the voice of my parent, parenting the inner child. And then from that point, I calmed down. So it's really, really important to focus on the good things that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's so important, isn't it? And being mindful of that, and noticing that, noticing how you may come across, or things that you may do, and just reassuring yourself that things are okay, and being mindful of that. It's really important. And yeah, I just thought I'd ask you some of these questions that I've kind of started asking people. Like, I would say, what would you say your spirit animal is? Not to put you on the spot or anything like that.
Oh no, that's fine. So I actually do a lot of work with animal totems. So animal totems is, as you mentioned, it's your spirit animals. So if anybody out there sort of finds that animals keep crossing their paths, literally crossing their paths, like a squirrel or a deer or something like that when you're driving, it's important to look it up, because it's a message from the angel, I say angels, but from the spirit world. It's a message from whoever's passed over that's watching over you.
Mm.
So my spirit guide is a wolf, because it's very much well, for a start, my dog looks like a wolf as well, which is probably why I was drawn to him. But it's
Yeah.
very much about, going after what I want, really focusing on, being very aware, being very alert, and actually having a really gentle nature within me, but there is the fire in me with as well, which will go after what I want. So that's my spirit animal for sure, is the wolf.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a wolf's really good spirit animal, and I think
Mm.
your connection to it's really really good and deep as well. And I think everyone's got different spirit animals, and I think it's important, like you said, to identify, like, if you're seeing certain animals
Yeah.
show up, there's probably a reason why. I've
Yes.
seen a lot of cats recently, but I'm allergic to cats. I don't know what that means. But
It depends what color the cat is.
yeah. Um Sometimes, yeah, it's interesting. They're probably sometimes black cats.
So black cats are to do with more so the spiritual side. So cats in
Yeah.
general are very spiritual animals, but specifically black cats. I mean, as we probably know and appreciate with Halloween, black cats are connected to witches. So they're very much like guiding animals. So they'll guide the human soul.
Mm,
And if black cats cross your path, it's a sign of good luck.
mm,
And also, if you see a white cat, it's to do with purity and being very connected with your pure self and your authentic self. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there's so many different meanings out there, but I mean, animals very much are a good way of leading ourselves into getting the right messages to help us move forwards on our path.
Mm. No, definitely. It's powerful, isn't it? It's so powerful. And I appreciate you sharing yours. And you're welcome. And I appreciate you letting me know about the cats as well. So I had more clarity on it
Yeah,
now.
sure.
And an accomplishment or accomplishments you're proud of.
My accomplishment is the last year during COVID, I moved my business online because it was always in person before. And I started running workshops for companies, which was really amazing. I didn't expect it to happen that quickly. So that's probably they're my biggest accomplishments so far.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think that's really great, and I think you're doing great work on what you're doing as well. And it's great that you've been able to pivot and being able to adapt,
Yeah,
to do that.
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And advice to people, trying to figure out, what they kind of maybe want to do in life.
Follow your passions, follow anything that inspires you, anything that makes you feel happy, anything that you're drawn to. Anything that you're inspired and drawn to is your intuition telling you what to do. The only reason I got to where I am today with what I'm doing is because I focused on what is it that I really, really want to do with my life. Forget about work. What do I want to do? And I was like, my core belief and my core driver is I want to help. I want to help people. I hate seeing people
Mm,
suffer. I want to help people get out of the experiences that I got out of. So how can I do this? So it's really important to follow it. If you're drawn to animals, then it's very clear indicator that you're meant to work with animals, however that may happen. But all I'd say is follow your heart, follow your intuition, and you can't go wrong.
yeah. No, I love that, and I think it's so important for people to tap into their heart and intuition, and to
Yeah.
really go with what they want to do in life, isn't it? And to find that, and to trust that as well, and work is work, isn't it? But there's, if you're not happy doing something, there's always that, like, if your heart desires to do something, like I said, follow
Mm.
that. That's something that you're doing as well, and being able to set up.
Yeah.
And another one, so what would you say, like, a big mistake or failure you've made, or how to cope with
My
them?
my biggest mistake wasn't believing in myself enough, and being too scared of launching new business ideas because I was scared of rejection. And that was the biggest failure I could have ever made because I actually just held myself back from fulfilling my dream.
Mm.
I would say that, don't get me wrong, like, at the end of the day, a lot of us will have jobs to pay the bills and we can't take risks and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can't just say, "Right, I'm just going to quit my job and run my dream." But all I'd say is don't not do your dream because you
Mm.
have a job at the moment. You can still
Yeah.
do it in your own free time. Follow your passions. Don't worry about the time of when things are going to happen, because you've got to surrender a part of your dreams to the universe, because you can only do so much, and you've got to let
Mm.
divine timing step in, because your energy will only bring in what you want when you're ready to receive it. So
Mm.
make sure that you really, really follow the intuitive hunches that you might get, because that's guiding you on your path.
Mm. I think that's a really great point you made. Like, you'll be open to it, like you'll be open to it when you want to receive it, kind of thing.
Mm,
And really kind of channeling into that. And like I said, mistakes happen, and a lot of times you learn from them. And as
mm.
you mentioned, like sometimes you can hold ourselves back, and sometimes we're unaware of it. But like, just being accountable, and like, trying not to hold yourself back from situations, because sometimes, like you said, by doing that, you kind of putting a block on things, aren't you, really?
Yeah, because ultimately, like for example, I now do tarot readings, and
Mm.
I was very sort of like, oh, I suppose fearful from, doing tarot readings, because I thought, oh, what if I don't get the messages right? What if I don't, get the guidance right? And actually, I was holding myself back. And because of my inner child, I was like,
Mm.
I don't feel good enough. That's why I'm not doing it. And actually, now I've launched it, I'm like, God, I should have done that ages ago.
Yeah.
Because it's actually made me more spiritual doing tarot readings, because it's now
Mm.
a direct channel for me to the spirit world to give people messages. So when I'm doing tarot readings, not only am I using the cards as a tool to actually, give people messages about their future and so forth, I'm actually getting messages directly from their guides into my
Mm.
mind and giving them out, feedback
Yeah.
from up above. So it's
Yeah.
actually helped open up my spiritual side way more than I've ever been, in terms of intuitively and things like that. And I would just say that don't be afraid. We have one life here. Do not be afraid of fulfilling your dreams, and don't worry about how am I going to get there? When am I going to get there? Let the universe take care of that. It's your job just to take action as and when you're intuitively guided to do so. So if something
Mm.
comes in and you think, oh, I really want to go for that walk today, never wanted to walk in that place before, follow that, because it could be that you're going to meet someone who's going to help you on your path. So
Yeah.
it's really, really important to really follow that heart,
Yeah.
follow that, what you're being told.
Yeah, no, I think that's really powerful, and I think, like, just trusting in that, isn't it? Trusting
Yeah.
in your intuition, and that
Mm.
that vibe you're getting, and listen to that, because it could direct you, and you could meet someone, or it could open up another opportunity, and it just kind of goes from there. And
Yeah.
like letting the universe work it out. Like, just keep doing, do what you need to do, and then just let the universe, let the universe support you. If that makes sense.
One thing I must mention very quickly is the fact that our conversations, whether they're in our head, in our thoughts, or whether they're actually verbally said out loud, they are all conversations with the universe. So what I mean
Mm.
by that is, be very wary and mindful of the language you use. So if you're saying, I want, that's great, but be careful to not say, I don't want. Because if you say, oh, I don't want that to happen, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to come across that person, what you're actually telling the universe is, yes, please bring it to me. So get very, very
Mm.
careful that I don't is you're using negative word to draw in what you want. So ultimately you're actually drawing in a negative experience or situation. So that's one thing I learned on my journey, was that. And also, if you're trying to manifest a goal into your reality, make sure that you say it as if you've already received it. So
Mm.
don't say it like, I am going to be successful. You say, I am successful. I'm always successful, and everything comes to me when I want it to.
Mm.
It's about really, really being mindful of it's all about the language we use. Your language dictates your reality. So,
Mm.
like I mentioned about the positive and negative thinking, there are just very slight ways to really tweak your language in order to manifest exactly what you want.
Mm. I think that's really good points, and I think, like, like the language that you use, and sometimes people say, "Oh, I haven't got that yet," or "I don't want that," or "I'll
Mm,
never have that," or "One day I'll have," and it's like, the language that you use, that kind of dictates your reality and your energy, and attracting that and moving towards that, isn't it? All kind of
absolutely.
has a part to play. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I think it's so important. People think about their thoughts and the language they use, and what they really
Mm,
say to themselves. Because it kind of, it's the foundations, isn't it, really? Because if you're on that narrative all the time, that might be negative, or might not be kind of put in the right direction, you'll probably,
mm,
it's a bit like a scare electrics almost, isn't it? You just need to change
Yeah,
kind of path, you know, to
completely.
direct to someone. Yeah.
And also one thing I picked up today, that I've always sort of like believed in, but I had a reminder of it today, was the fact that if you ever have self-doubt, or you ever think, oh gosh, you know, my dreams haven't manifested yet, just remember a time when you wanted what you have now, and then just say,
Mm,
right, well, what I've got now, I dreamt of this. You know, I
mm,
dreamt of, you know, whatever it is. So if you ever have any self-doubt, just remind yourself of that thought, and then it will take away the doubt, and therefore it will bring your manifestations in quicker. If we
mm,
worry about where our manifestations are, like as in how are they going to turn up and when are they going to turn up, what we're actually doing is we're saying we don't trust it. We don't
mm,
trust that they're going to come to our lives. And like I mentioned, everything's energy. We need to trust. And the only way to prove that trust is, or to say the universe, or whoever, the
mm.
soul, whatever, is you've just got to let go, surrender, say, right, I want what I want. And I know that it's going to happen in divine timing. And that's good enough for me. So I'll be patient and wait for it
Mm.
and take
Yeah,
action where needed. That is
yeah,
simple as that.
definitely.
Simple formula. There is no secret hidden, you know, agenda. It's all about taking it back to basics. That's all we
Yeah,
need to do.
yeah, definitely. No, I definitely agree. And I think it's all kind of where it starts, isn't it? And where you kind of you know, plant those positive seeds, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, see them grow. And I was gonna say as well, like, what would you say you're afraid of, or afraid, a fear that you have?
I think that my fear, if I was to really delve deep, is probably, you know, scared of not taking the risks that I might need to take to move me forwards. So I would say that whenever we come from a place of fear, it's ultimately we're coming from a place of not feeling good enough. So my
Mm,
biggest, I mean, I'm working at the moment on completely eradicating any self-doubt,
mm,
and eradicating anything like that from my programming and what I've learned growing up. But the fear that sometimes can come in is, what if I miss an opportunity? What if I don't take that risk? So in
mm.
order for me to counteract that, I've just got to keep believing and keep working on my personal development in order to grow my confidence. Because at the end of the day, the only way that we learn lessons, unfortunately, is to make mistakes. But
Mm.
those mistakes that we learn the lessons from help us to grow and become the person we need to be in order to be prepared for receiving what we really want.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you go through a waiting period, for example, you're waiting on something to happen, or you're waiting for something to manifest, whatever it is, it's just because you're being prepared for your blessings. So if you ever have a moment where you're like, oh, really impatient, like, where is this? Why is this not happening? What have I done wrong? Just remember that actually it is what we are all in a school here, and we're all students learning how to live this
Mm.
life, and that actually it's really important that we really do work with our patients and, you know, utilize that at us where we need to be.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's so important, isn't it? I think, like, you know, we're only human. We do have fears, but you know, being aware of what they are, and you know, like you know, like you mentioned, you know, not missing out and things like that. But you know, it's a process, isn't it? And you know, working on that, being aware of it, and you know, just telling yourself you're good enough, and constantly kind of, you know, working on yourself, because it's a, you know, it's a massive process, isn't it? And
Yeah.
but you know, as long as we're doing that, we're putting in the work, you know, to grow, you know.
And it's
And
about taking small steps as well. Like, you know, it's really overwhelming if you've never done sort of personal development before, or never worked on anything like that. It's really important to take small baby steps and then build it up
mm,
over time, because the human mind will just go into overdrive if you try and overwhelm it. It's a bit like trying to say to someone, right, I want you to run a marathon, but you've got to run the marathon with no training. You're going to pull a
mm,
muscle. And it's no different with the mind. You're going to pull that muscle if you
mm,
don't
mm.
ease yourself into it. So it's
Yeah,
really important to do that.
yeah, definitely. So there's little 1%, isn't it, that all kind of add up over time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And I was just gonna say, like, where can people find you on, like, say, social media and like your website and that kind of
Sure.
thing, if you have a website at all?
I do. So my website is www.believeyoudeserveit.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook as well. So my Facebook is called basically just Justine Markley Believe in You, and my Instagram is Instagram, and it's at Justine Markley Believe in You. So my Instagram, I upload a lot of videos. I upload a lot of podcast posts even, and this podcast. And I do a lot of self-help tips and a lot of spiritual stuff, a lot of explaining the spiritual side and things like that. I am doing an event in May, which is a spiritual event through a company called Spiritual Events and Tours. And that's basically where I'm going to be talking for a solid hour to an hour and a half about the spiritual side and talking about everything. So talking about ascension process, what the human body goes through when we ascend to a higher level of consciousness, talking about the levels of consciousness, how we go from 3D to 5D, talking about the spirit world in terms of what I've experienced personally, in terms of how you connect to the spirit world, how you connect to those people on the other side, talking about life after death, talking about the situation, things that happen to the body, the mind and the soul when we pass over, and all of that sort of thing. Everyone has their own beliefs, and everything that I teach is actually my own personal beliefs, but also my own experiences that have got me through that point. So in terms of the spiritual side, I just wanted to mention that because, you know, I understand a lot of people don't believe in life after death, which is totally understandable, but everything that I teach in that respect, I have been through myself in terms of I've been there, I've lived it. I know from my own experiences what goes on after. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
That's everything pretty much in terms of my links. I am on LinkedIn, just my name, Justine Markley, and I do post on there regularly, more so on the corporate side about my wellness workshops. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that's awesome. No, it's great, and you know, I will always, you know, like share your content because I think you're doing really great work, and you know, I really resonate with. You know, you're welcome, and you know, the work that you're doing, and I wish you all the best. You know, everything that you do, and yeah, no, it's been great having you on the podcast, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really, really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome, and all the best, and I'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Take care.